You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, even though I sound like the spawn of Kathleen Turner and Chewbacca. That is because I have major hay fever due to an incredibly every single day rainy spring, which in turn has produced pollen in droves, which has made me hay fever city in my head. Nonetheless, I am resolved in between hysterical sneezing and a throat that is very, very low-voiced. I am resolved to be not glum. I am resolved to be very positive, in fact, even though also we may be at war with Iran by the time you hear this. I think not, because the president seems in turn to be resolved not to go to war. He thinks that's because it's a positive sign that the Iran drone was not a manned drone. There was no person sitting inside it. He doesn't know that that's the point of a drone. There are no tiny little people inside driving drones, which is good. This is a good case where his ignorance works in our favor. Okay, so anyway, I'm resolved not to be negative. I'm very positive. We're maybe not going to go to war with Iran. Also, there are good things happening. We seem to be inching toward impeachment. That's a good sign. The polls, even though we don't believe in polls because of what they've done to us repeatedly, nevertheless, the polls seem to show that almost anyone alive who's Democratic could beat Trump. That's a good sign. It's Pride Month. That's a great sign. 50 years of Pride. We have a wonderful show. We have a guest in the conversation to talk about palliative care. Oh dear, you think to yourself, that's a glum subject. No, it's not. Would you rather not have palliative care? Gee whiz. Okay, so get on board. There's a baby robin in the garden, all puffy and glorious. We're going to talk about that. That's not sentimental. Don't you watch pet videos when you get depressed? Okay, so get on board. Baby robin. That's a good sign. And inside the headlines has, well, anyway, there are things happening there. And Surrealism Corner has some funny things and some very surreal things. That's a good sign. And even if I sound like Darth Vader, I am not. I am also not your father. So get on board, be positive, don't be glum. We'll make it through this, and let's get started. Don't be glum. Here we go. Well, in one sense, we could rip through inside the headlines pretty swiftly. Trump is sending 1,000 troops to mass around Iran with war hoops, which naturally makes the whole planet feel really secure, safe, and sound, especially since so far Iran has abided by all promises on the nuclear agreement to the satisfaction of the multinational force that signed onto it before the United States, under Trump's leadership, withdrew from it. The military has been busy on a number of fronts. In fact, a Defense Department survey found that unreported sexual assaults in military academies rose nearly 50% to 747, and the 2017-2018 school year reported that. Also, I'm sure you've heard that the acting Secretary of Defense, who was about to be elevated to being the Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan, is no longer either acting or actual secretary, since it turned out that he had been involved in a he hit her, she hit him, both hit their teenage son, who hit both of them, hair-raising family violence history, which forced him to withdraw his name from nomination after he had been confirmed. Nice. Over at the State Department, they were busy too. They were taking down rainbow flags that they had naively hung up to observe Gay and Lesbian Pride Month, since they've been doing that every June since 2011, when Hillary Rodham Clinton, as Secretary of State, initiated the observance with a landmark speech announcing that gay rights were human rights. Surprise! When she was sex state. Let us pause here for a moment and note, in fact, we could spit in the eye of Bernie Bros and Jill Stein fans who snarled at the time there was no difference between Hillary and Trump, and they were both sold-out corporate shills who would appoint the same court people, and they were money monopolists, etc., etc. May they choke on the same piroshki at the same Russian dinner lorded over by Vladimir. Anyway, it was, of course, Hillary who initiated observance of Pride Month at embassies throughout the world when she was sex state, setting an example even in countries where homosexuality was outlawed. That example, of course, is now totally shattered everywhere in the world. The State Department under Trump has eliminated the position of special envoy for gay and lesbian rights around the world, and bisexual rights as well, and instead initiated a commission for unalienable rights to explore natural law and natural rights. And Secretary of State Pompeo has said, "The task I have is informed by my belief in Jesus Christ as my Savior." Well, that's so reassuring. All exhale. In a mystery move, Michigan has dropped all 17 prosecutions against officials in the Flint water scandal, announced the Secretary General's office of the state. They said they would take no questions on this until June 28th, at which point they will announce a new investigation in the city of Flint itself. Will it be more militant and more probing? Will it connect the dots and start this time investigating from the top down? It had better. We can't just keep sending bottled water to these stricken folks. Nor can we solve the growing border crossing crisis without connecting the dots between climate change and drought and increasing migration. If we can't address climate change, we can't solve intensifying drought. And if we can't solve drought, crops will die. And if crops die, people will starve. And if you don't address climate change, you can't solve intensifying drought. And if you can't solve drought, crops will die. And if crops die, people will starve. And if famine drives them to other lands, this does not take rocket science. Just connect the dots. The Trump regime has come up with a new way to torture migrant children at the border. Last week it announced it would begin restricting or canceling educational, legal aid, and playground recreation for kids housed in government shelters. The chief of at least one large shelter operation said he would continue to offer education and sports at his network's facilities. But some 13,200 migrant children, including adolescents who cross the border alone and young kids separated from their parents, are currently housed in more than 100 shelters across the country. They receive English instruction, math, civics, and other classes. Most facilities have a sports field and allow children to go outside, often to play soccer at least once a day. But the Health and Human Services Department says that it has instructed grantees to begin scaling back or discontinuing activities not directly necessary for the protection of life and safety. 5 New York Channel 1 anchor women have sued the cable channel for age and gender discrimination, alleging a systematic effort by managers to force them off the air in favor of younger and less experienced hosts. The women, ranging in age from 40 to 61, include Roma Torre, Amanda Farinacci, Vivian Lee, Janine Ramirez, and Kristen Shaughnessy. They have been squeezed, they claim, in airtime, reduced in anchoring slots, excluded from promotional campaigns, and consistently ignored, while their male counterparts have thrived. We're going to stay on this story as it develops. But there's good news. Indie Women, the only study examining women's behind-the-scenes representation on independent and domestically produced films screening at more than 20 high-profile festivals in the United States, reports a record-setting year. The percentage of women working as directors, writers, producers, executive producers, and editors reached historic highs in the period stretching from July 2018 to June 2019. The percentage of women directors grew from 29% in 2017-18 to 33% in 2018-19. The percentage of women writers rose from 26% last year to 32% this year. If we take the longer view over the last decade, the percentage of women directing independent films increased from 22% in 2008-09 to 33% in 2018-19, and the percentage of women writing indie films grew from 19% in 2008-09 to 32% in 2018-19. That said, independent films still employ more than twice as many men as women, 68% versus 32%, as directors, writers, producers, executive producers, editors, and cinematographers. In short, however, after many years of tracking stubbornly stagnant numbers, this is the first study to document healthy gains for women working in a variety of behind-the-scenes roles in independent film. Hallelujah. It's time for a short break, but still coming up there's lots more, including fighting words and a conversation with Dr. Sunita Puri, who is the most comforting doctor I can imagine, especially if you're a word lover as I am, because she is lyrical and word-rich. But when we come right back, there's the Surrealism Corner. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back, and welcome into the Surrealism Corner. Some of these items are only one or two liners, sufficient quite unto themselves. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is leaving her post as White House press secretary. Even she has had it. She will probably run for governor of Arkansas. Listen, it's a fit. The president of the nation's largest anti-abortion advocacy group said it would spend $41 million in the 2020 cycle to re-elect Trump. Yep. The goal, said Marjorie Dannenfelser, president of the Susan B. Anthony List, oh, Susan, you must be spinning in your grave, is to eventually overturn Roe v. Wade. Joe Biden, recalling past days of, quote, civility in the Senate, says that noted segregationist senators there never called him boy. Mitch McConnell says he sees no need for reparations to the black community for centuries of abduction and enslavement, since no such indignities against black people were committed during his lifetime. While we're in the Senate, please, let's pause respectfully, take off our hats if we're wearing any, and put a hand over our heart beside the graves of the following legislation buried there proudly by self-named Grim Reaper Mitch McConnell after having been passed by the House of Representatives, just so we never forget. reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, murdered by the NRA because it would have been bad for gun sales. The Paycheck Fairness Act, just because. Legislation protecting Americans with pre-existing conditions. Lowering prescription drug prices. Protecting election security. There are at least 100 House-passed bills just sitting around gathering dust that McConnell won't let on the floor of the Senate because he knows they even have Republican support and so would pass. In fact, the only thing he does permit on the Senate floor is hand-picked federal judiciary conservative, highly conservative candidates. Are you laughing merrily yet? Oh, I almost forgot to say that a number of people have mentioned I should not have pointed out any comparison between McConnell and a turtle because it is wrong to criticize any being on the basis of their appearance. They are right. That is correct. I apologize for having seemed to insult turtles, who are wise and have been around for millennia. Also, as long as we're in mourning mold, that's mourning with a U, and since I'm always yammering on about connect the dots, I would like to put in a word of memorial for cursive writing, which is going so out of style they're not even teaching it in schools anymore. Connective anything seems to be going out of style. Conversation, diplomacy, face-to-face communication. Maybe I'm just getting old, but hopefully sex is still in for a while, although online everything is growing so fast that the wired future is encroaching at such an alarming rate I'm considering becoming a Luddite. 2 final items, one quite grim, though oddly prideful, and the last simply charming. Let's notice in passing that the Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Executions for the United Nations Human Rights Agency that broke the news definitively finding the Saudi royal family, and in particular Prince Mohammed bin Salman, responsible for the murder and dissection of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, was a woman, Agnes Callamard. Writing and signing this report, let's face it, was an extraordinary act of courage because the Saudi royal family can find and murder anyone, anywhere. This act will change the political balance of power in the Middle East and around the world. It already is. Although everyone knew, and many said, no one had acted on this before, it seems it took a woman and the United Nations, about which, by the way, everyone shrugs dismissively, to pull it off. I honestly didn't know where to put this item except in the surrealism corner. But already it's affecting diplomacy. It's affecting sanctions. The ripple effects of this report will be disquieting and extraordinary. Thanks to a woman, and thanks to the United Nations, which periodically lives up to the hopes we have for it across the world. And last, do you know when puppies look at you with their eyebrows perked up as if saying, "Why can't we go out now?" Or, "Why can't I get up on the bed?" That twitch up of the inner eyebrow? Well, it's a highly evolved tweak of the muscle called the levator anguli oculi miliaris. That's quite a mouthful, but actually it's an eyeful. Dogs, not wolves, you betcha. Dogs have it. Humans favored it. Also cats elected not to have it, thus giving cats that look of world-weary ennui as in, "Oh my God, you can't really be meaning what you say" expression, while dogs are plaintively broadcasting an appeal without even a single bark. Clever thing, evolution. Dogs with the so-called inner eyebrow raise are much more likely to get adopted from shelters. It's surreal. take another pause before the conversation. But wait a minute. As women and men of conscience, we've been rebelling our whole lives against what was expected of us. The way we should walk, the way we should talk, what we should eat, what we should read, think, breathe, live, who we should love, how we should love, how we should live, and how we should die. We've been rebelling. What if we changed even the way we think about death? Wouldn't that be perhaps the most rebellious act of all, the most profound? When we come back, we're going to discuss that. I think it just may be the most important act of revolution we can envision. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to the conversation. This week, my guest is a philosopher, a writer, and a medical doctor. Dr. Sunita Puri is the medical director of the Palliative Medicine and Supportive Care Service at the Keck Hospital and Norris Cancer Center of the University of Southern California, where she also serves as chair of the Ethics Committee. She graduated from Yale University with a BA in anthropology and studied modern history at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar. She completed medical school and residency training in internal medicine at the University of California, San Francisco, and fellowship training in hospice and palliative medicine at Stanford. She is the recipient of writing residencies at the MacDowell Colony, UCross Foundation, and the Mesa Refuge. She was a finalist for the PEN Emerging Voices Fellowship in 2015, and her work has appeared in the New York Times, Slate, and the Journal of American Medical Association, and in JAMA. Her book recently that came out was called That Good Night, Life and Medicine in the 11th Hour, and it's a beautifully written book. She's the American-born daughter of immigrants, and she knew from a young age that the gulf between her parents' experiences and her own was impossible to bridge except for two elements, medicine and spirituality. And the book bridges the evocative stories of her family and the patients she cares for. I apologize for my hoarseness due to hay fever this spring throughout the conversation. Here is Dr. Sunita Puri. Dr. Puri, Sunita, if I may call you that, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
The book is remarkable. It's called That Good Night. I assume taken from the Dylan Thomas poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night.
Exactly.
And the subtitle is Life and Medicine in the 11th Hour, because you are a palliative physician in this new field of palliative medicine. Talk to us about that. Excuse me, hay fever. Talk to me about that and what drew you to the field and how did you know you wanted to do palliative care? Many people would say, oh, that's a depressing field. I don't think so, but what drew you?
So, when I was a fourth-year medical student, just weeks away from graduating, I was just about to start my residency, and I thought, I don't know if I can continue my education because I wasn't inspired in my medical education.
Uh-huh.
My mother is an anesthesiologist, and so I had grown up with looking to her as the example of a model physician because she was both highly technically skilled, but also deeply compassionate and humanistic with her patients. And that's what I wanted to be. But as I went through my training, I found that humanism and compassion took a far back seat to memorization and to looking at people as a list of diagnoses rather than the complex human beings who were living with a bunch of diagnoses.
Precisely.
And it was at the very end of my training that I did a 2-week elective on the palliative medicine service where I went to medical school. And that's when I saw for the first time a physician model for me, a field that I could find a home in. And I could find a home for all my selves, the self that wanted to be just like my mother and had followed her into medicine, and the self that really loves language and communication and writing. And so much of what we do in palliative medicine is precisely that. So I was drawn to it because it was a home for me in many different senses of that word, but it also really, it's a growing, new, interesting field where I thought I kind of almost felt like it was a countercultural movement in medicine that drew me in because I felt like this is the place where we can really make a huge difference in the lives and the deaths of patients and their families.
Yes, yes. It's quite true. It's a brave decision that you made, particularly practicing in the United States, where there is such a denial of death. No. Look in the other direction. Don't even discuss that. I have a DNR and I have a universal, I'm a universal donor. I carry a card. I have a power of attorney set up and a health proxy. And when I was doing these things and mentioned it to friends, even the most, intelligent, literate, political people I know were kind of shocked. Is there something really, really wrong? Well, no, but I'm getting older. And when something does really go wrong, I don't want to have to think about these things. I want them to be done and ready to go. But it's amazing. The most intelligent, literate, political people get nervous about this discussion. A number of smart, intelligent, good people have begun to have it. I think Ellen Goodman has a website called "Having the Conversation" with your, your children, your friends, your family. But why is there such resistance? Is that Western in general or U.S. specific? Do you know?
I think, to be honest, it's a phenomenon that spans cultures and nations. I think there is generally a human fear of non-existence and the unknown that comes with the idea of death. And we have so much fear and anxiety yoked to the concept of death and dying that it really gets in the way of planning and having honest conversations about being a mortal person and planning in such a way that the burden of decision-making doesn't fall to people who love us, whose own judgment might be clouded by emotions when the stakes are high. I think, I was raised in a home where my parents they're both Hindu, and a basic tenet of Hindu philosophy, similar to what you see in Buddhism, is that everything in life is fleeting, including our bodies.
Yes.
And so I grew up as a child learning this. And I write about that in the very beginning of the book, that one of my earliest memories is my father sitting with me on the couch, and we're watching a sunset. And I asked him why the sky doesn't always look as pretty as it did during that sunset. And he said, everything in life passes like the colors you're looking at. And as a 5-year-old, I didn't get it, but it is one of the lessons that serves me very well in my own practice of medicine and in my own life, because I can look at a patient and help them to see that, for example, they may be a fighter and they may have a lot of reasons to live, but the body has its natural limits.
Yes.
And at a certain point in medicine, we need to respect those limits rather than push them further and cause more suffering. And I think if people almost took the emotion out of it and really looked at death logically, which is, I know, a very big ask. But no, I think everyone can understand that everything has its limits. Our pets have their limits.
Yes.
The trees in our garden, the leaves change color and they fall to the ground and then they regenerate in the spring. Like, we see examples of that natural turning all around us. But when it comes to us, we want to pretend that we are beyond nature when we're not.
And being immortal sounds extremely tiring, I must
I
say.
agree.
Well,
I would never want that. The
oh
people
my
who
God.
tell me I want to live forever, I kind of think, why?
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you want
Why
that?
would you want that? My God. Well, also, I sometimes tell women and ask women, don't they think that death is a feminist issue? And everybody sort of does a double take but it is, because one reason for having all your papers in order and a DNR and daring to think about what it is you really want, a green burial or to be composted or to be cremated. I mean, every aspect of it, and certainly the health directives toward the end. One reason for thinking that is that statistically, women's wishes, I'm sure you know this, are ignored when the family opposes them, not men's. Unless there are written papers, and sometimes even if there are. Let's say a woman wants a DNR, do not resuscitate if it's, pretty hopeless. The family, because the mother is usually the tent pole of the family, the woman, the family will muster around and say, no, keep mom alive, keep mom alive. And the doctors will often listen to the family over the dying woman's express wishes. And there's a high statistical rate on this, which infuriates me. You don't even get to have control over your own death. It's not true of men. If the father of a family makes his wishes known, they're almost inevitably obeyed and followed, but not for women. Which is all the more reason to have them, all your papers in order. So even that is a feminist issue.
I completely agree. And it ties into this idea of women wanting to maintain a semblance of control over their bodies, whether
Yes.
it's reproductive rights or end of life.
Precisely.
And I've certainly seen that. I also think because a disproportionate number of women end up being caregivers to
Yes.
their partners who
Yes.
are dying.
Yes.
That is another way in which women's needs in the end of life, be it their own or their loved ones, is kind of overlooked, because I do think that caregivers are the unsung heroes in this country, that we could not have a system that tends to the needs of the dying without having really good caregivers, and the vast majority of them are women.
That's right. And unpaid. I mean, they're just we count on that unpaid labor. Apparently,
Truly.
speaking of money, 25% of Medicare spending is on costs related to care in the last 6 months. And yet those costs are mostly focused on keeping alive a person who is dying.
Yes.
Often against their will. What can we do about that, Sunita?
I think that, the earlier on we are having clear, compassionate conversations about what a diagnosis means for someone's life, from the very beginning of that diagnosis, the more we kind of, establish expectations of treatment. So it might be telling someone, you have a diagnosis of cancer. It has spread beyond the place where it started. So let's say it's colon cancer.
Right.
Now that it has spread, we do not have ways to cure it. Therefore, all of our therapies will be focused on giving you a good quality of life for however long that might be. But as your doctor, I'm really interested in how you define quality of life and what level of treatment might be too much for you. And if you say that at the beginning, people know that this is going to be an ongoing conversation, so that when inevitably things change and you're faced with a fork in the road of either going to the ICU and potentially, being treated for things that are ultimately irreversible versus going home and dying in the care of hospice, then those conversations will have led up to that decision point and won't be made kind of in the throes of an emergency. So I think the earlier and better communication is essential. I also think my colleagues are generally unprepared to have those sorts of discussions, and there's a real paucity of palliative care training in medical schools and in nursing schools. So in order to have that be a more common part of patient care, we really need every doctor and nurse to have the basic ability to lead those discussions, or even to set expectations from the beginning of a diagnosis to say, this is not curable, but I will always care for you.
Yes.
And you get to help me understand what's important to you as time goes on. That is something I think every doctor and nurse should be able to do, even though we are so deeply socialized to keep people alive at all costs.
Oh, my God,
and I know,
yes.
I've been there, so I get it.
But
I don't think that's the right way to care for people.
No. I mean, even if the person is brain dead, even if the person is, all those cases where they kept women who were pregnant alive as incubators, basically, against the woman's express will, are horrifying, absolutely horrifying. So this requires changes in teaching, in training, and probably in medical policy, governmental policy in terms of healthcare, doesn't it?
I think so, for sure, because, reimbursement for palliative care is not as widely available as it is for other services in medicine. And something I've learned is that, unfortunately, money and funding matters. You can't just make the argument that we will, on my service, for example, that I'll just see every patient possible without adequate funding and support from the hospital. That will lead me and my team to burn out.
Yes, of course.
So making the case for palliative care can be tricky sometimes, but nonetheless, we need that funding, we need the administrative support, and sometimes changes in policy from high levels can really assist with that. Yeah. And I think patients and families asking for it, recognizing the benefits, and asking their doctors to advocate for more palliative care. I know that makes a difference because it made a difference at the institution where I work, where a family was, really upset with the way that their loved one died and they were very vocal about the need for more palliative care, and that made a difference.
Yes, if people would learn to rattle their chains more, it would be good for everyone, I think. This is a really helpful, useful book for everybody because sooner or later we will all face the 11th hour, and if you're aware of that and not afraid of acknowledging the awareness, listeners, or someone who is in that situation. We all will be eventually. And the book is called That Good Night, Life and Medicine in the 11th Hour. It's deeply informative. It's eye-opening, and it's written appallingly well by Dr. Sunita Puri, who has been our guest today. Thank you so much, Sunita. And keep up all the good work, both on the page and in palliative care. We need you.
Thank you so much, Robin. It's been wonderful talking with you.
We need to take one last break, and then we'll return with some fighting words.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, it's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Talk radio with a brain.
Welcome back to some fighting words. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's what Fannie Lou Hamer, the magnificent civil rights leader and head of the Mississippi Freedom Democrats, said, and I thought I understood what she meant back in the 1960s. but now I understand it better in my bones. You determine to manufacture affirmation if you have to. That's where yes we can comes from. Anger can get you there, and women have a hard time with that, but we're learning. It's the mysterious place of reserve from which we draw resilience, endurance, imagination, strength, even humor. Art lives there, like jazz and lullabies and hope. Signals live there, like songs and like quilts with codes that map directions for routes to take north to freedom. Wit and upside-down inside-outs live there, like, why do we wring our hands that 40% of Americans reportedly approve Trump when that number is falling every day, but in the process we don't notice and proclaim that 60% of Americans disapprove intensely of him, with that number growing every day. That's amazing, 60%. So this is about those Americans. This is about me moaning and groaning in reluctant anticipation at reports that 4.5 million people were about to descend on my quiet neighborhood, Greenwich Village, for 50th anniversary Lesbian and Gay Pride Month, while all I could think of was, like Hannah Gadsby, the great performance artist, the nice quiet sound that a cup of tea makes when it clinks in its saucer. But actually, as the streets filled, it's a glad and glorious sight of pairs and groups of pairs from all over the world, arm in arm and hip to hip, celebrating a half-century of pride. Some of them old enough to have lived and fought through it or be mourning those who didn't. Some of them so young they had only heard stories, cramming the sidewalks and spilling over into the streets, laughing and chanting and singing in their freedom. One young couple, maybe in their teens, 2 women, one with bright lilac hair streaming behind her mahogany skin, the other with a long blonde braid trailing down her back, both very much in love, unable to take their eyes off each other, walking along in locked hip step, smiling the sweetness of their lust-provoking grins from everyone who passed them, oblivious in their bliss. Then when I got home, it was the domestic joy of the fledgling in the garden. My little garden has been so generous over the years, giving me subject matter for many poems, teaching me patience, rewarding my labors with not only poems, but fruit and herbs and flowers and sunny days and quiet nights. Since it's an organic garden, creatures come here, and many, many birds, new ones lately given climate change, ones that I've not seen before. But always the standards, blue jays, finches, robins, sometimes starlings and chickadees and woodpeckers, and always different kinds of sparrows. Now this year the robin family have shared the raising of a chick who fell from the nest and has been tottering around the ground, with the parents zipping up and down to tend it and feed it. Yes, both parents. I even checked. I looked it up. She goes back and forth to rebuild the nest for the next brood. Apparently they have 2 to 3 broods a year, while he feeds and tends to this one. At first I thought this one was a hawk chick because it's so big, it's larger than a baseball. And periodically I have falcons in the garden, so I thought it might be one of them, a hawk or a falcon. But the picture that I emailed to the Audubon Society identified it as a robin, and sure enough the parents are robins. So the fledgling waddled around and cleaned itself and stared and yawned and peeped and squawked and got fed and peeped and pooped and pooped and pooped. Oh, it pooped quite a lot. It flitted up on garden furniture and pooped there. It flits on more garden furniture and it poops there. It pooped. You get the point, I think. I think that the mother and the father were very amused that it pooped everywhere. Well, 3 days ago, they began teaching the fledgling how to fly. This, you understand, involves a great deal of patience and a considerable amount of veering left, swooping right, and then frantic flap, 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 and bonk, 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 and then splat and splunge and veering right and veering left, more flap, 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 and the parents singing and the baby squawking, and then finally splat, flap, bonk, splush, splat into the bird bath, and then do it all over again. Yesterday was a bit smoother, and there was a lot of splat and puffy, wet baby feathers everywhere, and yesterday again a bit smoother by the afternoon, and then the parents singing and the baby squawking, and then there it was. I thought, there it is. Do it over. Do it over. Do it over again till you get it right. The fledgling bird and the flame in the eyes of the two young lovers. The 50-year lit fuel already burning for millennia. Relit for centuries. Struck fresh in the glances of the lovers till you get it right, till you get it free. The energy that fires the reserve that we draw on. The reserve that will carry us through, the reserve that still carries us, that always has, that always will, that carries us through. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's our show for today. You can follow me on Twitter at @TheRobinMorgan and on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRobinMorgan. Check out my blog at robinmorgan.net and find my latest book, Dark Matter, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for our show. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.